Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through Kepler Station. The air was thick and smelled like oil and metal. Strange sounds came from every direction. Alien voices spoke in languages he did not know. Machines hummed and clicked. Somewhere in the distance, something was being welded. The station was old and dirty. Paint peeled from the walls. Rust covered many of the metal surfaces. Lights flickered on and off. This was not the kind of place where good people came to do good business. But Jake needed supplies for his ship, and Kepler Station had the best prices in this part of space. Jake was the captain of a cargo ship called the New Horizon. He was 35 years old with brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been flying cargo ships for 10 years. Most of the time his job was boring. He moved boxes from one planet to another. He delivered food, tools, and other things that people needed. It was honest work and it paid enough to keep his small crew fed. His first officer, Lisa Park, walked beside him. She was younger than Jake, maybe 28, with short black hair and sharp green eyes. She was good at her job and always watched out for trouble. Behind them walked Danny Cole, the ship's engineer. Danny was a big man with red hair and a friendly face. He could fix anything that broke on their ship. They were looking for a trader named Vex who sold ship parts. Jake had bought from Vex before. The alien was expensive but sold good quality parts that did not break after a few months. As they walked deeper into the station, Jake noticed something wrong. The other areas of the station were noisy and busy. Here it was quiet, too quiet. The few people they saw moved quickly and did not look at them. "Everyone seemed afraid, Captain," Lisa said in a low voice. "Something is not right here." Jake nodded. He felt it too. They turned a corner and saw a group of large alien guards. The guards had gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces looked like they were carved from stone. They wore black uniforms and carried energy weapons. Jake recognized them as Vorthak. The Vorthak were traders, but they were not the kind of traders that Jake liked to do business with. They were known for being cruel and caring only about money. Most humans tried to avoid them. One of the guards looked at Jake and his crew. The alien's small black eyes studied them for a moment, then it waved them through with one of its 4 hands. "Keep moving," the guard said in broken English. "No stopping here." Jake wanted to ask what was happening, but Lisa touched his arm and shook her head. They walked past the guards and continued down the corridor. After a few minutes, they found Vex's shop. The alien trader was a small, thin creature with blue skin and large yellow eyes. When he saw Jake, he seemed nervous. "Captain Morrison," Vex said, his voice shaking a little. "You should not be here today. Bad business happening." "Very bad business. What kind of bad business?" Jake asked. Vex looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then he moved closer to Jake and spoke very quietly. "The Vorthak have set up market in lower levels. They sell people, living people, from worlds that cannot fight back." Jake felt his stomach turn. He had heard rumors about this kind of thing, but he had hoped they were not true. In this part of space, there were many small planets with people who had not yet learned to travel between stars. These people had no way to protect themselves from aliens with advanced weapons and ships. "That's slavery," Jake said, his voice hard with anger. "Yes," Vex said sadly. "But who will stop them? The Stellar Alliance is far away. Local governments are too weak or too scared. The Vorthak pay well, so many people look the other way." Danny made a sound of disgust. Lisa's face was pale with anger. "We should report this," Lisa said. "To who?" Vex asked. "Station security works for whoever pays them. And the Vorthak pay very well." Jake bought the parts he needed from Vex, but his mind was not on business. As they walked back toward their ship, he could not stop thinking about what Vex had told him. Somewhere in this station, people were being bought and sold like animals. He tried to tell himself it was not his problem. He was just a cargo ship captain. He could not save everyone. But the thought kept eating at him. They were almost back to the docking bay when Jake stopped walking. "Captain?" Lisa asked. Jake looked at his crew. Danny and Lisa had been with him for 3 years. They were good people. They had families back on Earth who counted on them to come home safe. He had no right to ask them to get involved in something this dangerous, but he also could not just walk away. "Lisa, take Danny back to the ship," Jake said. "Get the cargo loaded and file our flight plan. I'll be back in an hour." "Where are you going?" Lisa asked, though Jake could tell from her expression that she already knew. "I need to see something," Jake said. "Captain, this is not a good idea," Danny said. "The Vorthak are dangerous." If they catch you snooping around, I know, Jake said, but I have to look. I have to know what's really happening down there. Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. If you're not back in 2 hours, we're coming after you, she said. Jake smiled. Fair enough. He turned and walked back into the dark corridors of Kepler Station. His heart was beating fast, but he knew he had to do this. If people were being hurt, someone had to care enough to do something about it. Even if that someone was just a cargo ship captain who should have minded his own business. Jake found the entrance to the lower levels behind a stack of old cargo containers. The metal door was rusty and had no markings on it. A single Vorthak guard stood nearby, but he was looking the other way and talking into a communication device. Jake waited until the guard moved away, then slipped through the door. The stairs were dark and narrow. The air smelled worse here, like fear and sadness and things he did not want to think about. As he went down the stairs, he could hear voices. Alien voices speaking in the Vorthak language. He also heard other sounds that made his hands shake with anger. Crying, begging, the sound of metal chains. At the bottom of the stairs was a large room lit by dim yellow lights. Jake hid behind a support beam and looked around. What he saw made him feel sick. Cages. Dozens of metal cages filled with people from different worlds. Some looked almost human, but with different colored skin or strange eyes. Others were very different, covered in fur or scales or with extra arms or tentacles. But they all had one thing in common. They all looked broken and scared. Vorthak traders walked between the cages talking to buyers who came to look at the prisoners. Jake watched as a creature with 6 legs and purple skin was dragged out of a cage and forced to stand, while buyers examined it like it was a piece of equipment. Jake wanted to rush in and free everyone, but he was one man with no weapons. The Vorthak guards carried energy rifles that could kill him before he took 3 steps. He needed to be smart about this. He moved carefully around the edge of the room, staying in the shadows. In one corner, he found something that made his heart break. There was a section of old cages that looked like they had not been used in a long time. Most were empty, but in the very last one, in the darkest corner, someone sat curled up against the back wall. It was a young woman, maybe 25 years old. Her skin was pale blue and her hair was long and silver. She was very thin, like she had not eaten enough food for a long time. Her clothes were torn and dirty. But what scared Jake the most was her eyes. They were open, but they looked at nothing. She sat perfectly still like a statue. Jake moved closer to the cage. The woman did not move or look at him even when he was right in front of her. "Hey," he whispered softly. "Can you hear me?" No response. She just sat there staring at nothing. Jake looked around and saw a Vorthak trader walking toward him. Quickly, he pretended to be a customer looking at the cages. "You interested in that one?" the Vorthak asked in broken English. He was older than the guards, with scars on his gray skin and gold rings on his arms. "She is no good. Broken mind. Cannot work. Cannot follow orders. What happened to her?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The Vorthak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "She is Ilani from Elan Prime. We took that planet 12 years ago. Good miners, the Ilani, smart, strong, sold thousands of them." Jake felt cold. What happened to her planet? "Strip-minded clean," the Vorthak said with pride. "Took all the good metals. Left nothing but rock and dust. The Ilani who survived the mining became slaves. This one was trouble from the start. Always trying to escape. Always fighting. We had to teach her to behave." The way he said teach made Jake want to hit him. But she learned too well, the Vorthak continued. "Broke her mind completely. Has been like this for 3 years. Cannot even feed herself. We keep meaning to dispose of her, but never get around to it." "Dispose of her?" Jake asked. "Kill her," the Vorthak said simply. "She eats food but produces no work." Bad for business, Jake stared at the woman in the cage. She was the last of her people, and these monsters were going to kill her because she was not profitable enough. "How much?" Jake asked. The Vorthak looked surprised. "You want to buy her?" "She is useless. Brain is gone. How much?" Jake repeated. The alien thought for a moment. 2,000 credits. But you waste your money. She is good for nothing. 2,000 credits was almost all the money Jake had saved for emergency repairs to his ship. But looking at the broken woman in the cage, he knew he could not walk away. "Deal," Jake said. The Vorthak looked even more surprised, but he was happy to take Jake's money. Within 10 minutes, Jake had signed papers that said he now owned another person. The thought made him sick, but it was the only way to get her out of here. The Vorthak opened the cage and tried to drag the woman out, but Jake stopped him. "I'll get her," Jake said. He knelt down in front of the cage and spoke softly. "My name is Jake. I'm going to help you, okay? I'm going to get you out of here." The woman did not respond, but she also did not fight when Jake gently helped her stand. She was lighter than he expected, like she was made of paper instead of flesh and bone. Jake wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and slowly led her out of the cage. She walked when he guided her, but her eyes never focused on anything. It was like her body was there, but her mind was somewhere far away. Getting back to his ship was the longest walk of Jake's life. Every step he expected Vorthak guards to stop them and ask questions. But no one paid attention to one human with his new purchase. When they reached the docking bay, Lisa and Danny were waiting by the ship's loading ramp. Their faces showed shock when they saw what Jake was carrying. "Captain," Lisa said quietly. "What did you do?" "I bought her freedom," Jake said. Danny looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Jake, you know we can't take her back to Earth. The Stellar Alliance has rules about this kind of thing. They'll ask questions we can't answer." "I know," Jake said, "but I couldn't leave her there. They were going to kill her." Lisa looked at the woman Jake was supporting. The woman's silver hair hung in front of her face, and she had not made a sound since they left the cage. "What's wrong with her?" Lisa asked. "The Vorthak broke her mind," Jake said. "Her name is... I don't know her name. Her people were called the Alani. She's the last one." The three humans stood in silence for a moment, looking at the broken woman who represented the end of an entire civilization. "Get her on the ship," Lisa said finally. "We'll figure out what to do next once we're away from this place." Jake smiled at his crew. They were good people. They helped the woman onto the ship and got her settled in the medical bay. Dr. Karen Wells, their ship's medic, was waiting for them. Karen was in her 40s with gray hair and kind brown eyes. She had seen a lot of terrible things during her years in space, but when she looked at their new passenger, her face went pale. "What did they do to her?" Karen asked after she finished her examination. "We don't know the details," Jake said. "But it was bad," Karen nodded. "I can heal her body. She's malnourished and has old injuries that never healed properly. But her mind, that's going to take time. Maybe a lot of time." "How much time?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Karen said honestly. "She might never recover completely. The trauma she's experienced, it's beyond anything I've seen before." Jake looked at the woman lying on the medical bed. Even unconscious, she looked afraid. "Then we give her as much time as she needs," he said. 3 weeks had passed since they left Kepler Station. The woman Jake had rescued still had not spoken a single word. Dr. Wells had healed her body, but her mind remained locked away somewhere they could not reach. Jake visited her every day. At first, he just sat quietly beside her bed. Then he started talking to her, even though she never answered. He told her about Earth, about blue skies and green trees and oceans that stretched beyond the horizon. He told her about his childhood, about his crew, about anything he thought might interest her. The woman would sit on her bed and stare at the wall. Sometimes she would eat the food they brought her, but only if someone put it directly in her hands. She never asked for anything. She never made any sound at all. Jake had found some old data files about the Alani people in the ship's computer. He learned that they had been peaceful and artistic. They could share thoughts with each other using their minds without speaking words. They made beautiful music and paintings that showed their deep connection to their planet. All of that was gone now. The Vorthak had destroyed their world and sold their people as slaves. This broken woman was all that remained of an entire civilization. One night, Jake was sitting with her as usual, reading from a book of human poetry. He thought maybe the rhythm of the words might help her somehow. The woman was having another nightmare. She had them every night, terrible dreams that made her shake and cry without waking up. Jake put down his book and gently took her hand, like he had done many times before. Usually, this helped calm her nightmares a little, but this time was different. The moment his skin touched hers, Jake felt something strange in his mind. It was like a whisper, but not with words. It was a feeling of terrible sadness mixed with surprise. For just a moment, he sensed another mind touching his own. The woman's eyes opened wide and focused on his face for the first time since he had rescued her. Her mouth opened like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Then the moment passed and her eyes went empty again. But Jake knew something had changed. She had felt him. She had connected with his mind even for just a second. The next day, Jake went to the ship's library and searched for everything he could find about telepathy. Most of what he found was not very useful, just theories and stories. But he did learn that some species could share thoughts and emotions through mental contact. Maybe that was what had happened. Maybe when he touched her hand, her telepathic abilities had awakened for a moment, and she had sensed his thoughts. Jake decided to try something new. Instead of just talking to her, he would try to think about peaceful, happy things while holding her hand. He thought about sunny days on Earth, about the sound of rain on leaves, about the feeling of safety and warmth. It worked a little. When he concentrated on good thoughts while touching her hand, her nightmares became less violent. Sometimes she would even seem to relax. After another week of this, something wonderful happened. Jake was sitting with her during one of her nightmares, holding her hand and thinking about a beautiful sunset he had seen on Earth. Suddenly, she spoke. "Kira," she whispered. Jake almost jumped out of his chair. It was the first word she had said since he rescued her. "Kira?" he asked gently. "Is that your name?" She looked at him with eyes that were still scared but more focused than before. She nodded slightly. "My name is Jake," he said. "You're safe now, Kira. You're on my ship and no one is going to hurt you anymore." Kira tried to speak again, but the words came out in a language Jake did not understand. He realized she was speaking in her own language, the language of the Alani. Over the next few days, Jake worked with Dr. Wells to help Kira remember how to speak English. Her mind was still very damaged, but pieces of her old self were starting to come back. The first thing she told them, when she could speak clearly enough, was about her people. "My world," she said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "They killed my world, took everything. The trees, the water, the mountains, all gone." Jake felt anger burn in his chest. "I'm sorry, Kira, I'm so sorry." "My family," Kira continued. "My friends, all dead or sold away. I tried to find them, tried to escape and find them, but the Vorthak caught me every time. They hurt me until I stopped trying. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," Jake said. But Kira shook her head. "Need to talk. Need to remember. If I don't remember, then my people are truly dead." Over many conversations, Kira told Jake about the Alani. She described their beautiful cities that grew like living trees from the ground. She told him about their music, which they sang with their minds as well as their voices. She explained how they could share memories and emotions just by touching. "When the Vorthak came," Kira said, "we tried to share our pain with them. We thought if they could feel what we felt, they would stop. But their minds are different. They cannot feel what others feel. They only understand force and money." Jake listened to every word. He was amazed by what Kira told him about her people, but he was also angry about what had been lost. "An entire civilization wiped out for profit. Are there others?" Jake asked. "Other Ilani who survived?" Kira was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "I can feel them sometimes when I reach out with my mind. Not many, maybe a few dozen, scattered across many worlds. All slaves. All broken like I was. Could you find them?" Jake asked. "Maybe," Kira said, "if I could get close enough to them. But they are far away and their owners would not sell them easily." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he looked at Kira with determination in his eyes. "What if we helped them?" he said. "What if we found a way to free them?" Kira stared at him like he was crazy. "You are one ship. The Vorthak have armies. You cannot fight them." "Maybe not by fighting," Jake said. "But there might be other ways." Over the next few days, Jake talked with his crew about Kira's people. Lisa and Danny and Dr. Wells all agreed that something should be done to help the surviving Alani. But they were worried about the danger. "The Vorthak won't just let us take their property," Lisa pointed out. "And if we start freeing slaves, every criminal organization in this part of space will want us dead." "I know it's dangerous," Jake said. "But look at what they did to Kira. Look at what they did to her entire world. If we don't help, who will?" Danny scratched his red beard thoughtfully. "My uncle was in the military," he said. "He always said that sometimes you have to take a stand, even when the odds are bad. Otherwise, you're not really living, you're just existing." Dr. Wells nodded. "I became a doctor to help people. These Ilani need help more than anyone I've ever seen." Lisa sighed. "I think you're all crazy. But I'm in. We'll need to be very careful and very smart about this. Jake smiled at his crew. They were good people, and they were willing to risk their lives to help others. But they would need more than good intentions. They would need allies, resources, and a plan that could work against an enemy much more powerful than they were. The real work was about to begin. 6 months later, Jake's small cargo ship had become something very different. They now had allies across a dozen star systems. Other ship captains who were tired of seeing injustice had joined their cause. Some were humans like Jake, but others were aliens from different worlds who had their own reasons to hate the Vorthak. Alex Rodriguez was one of their best new allies. He was a former military pilot who had lost his family to slavers years ago. His ship was fast and well-armed, perfect for rescue missions. Maria Santos ran communications for their growing network. Her sister had been taken by slave traders, and Maria used her skills to intercept Vorthak messages and find out where prisoners were being held. Ben Turner was their weapons expert. He was a quiet man with sad eyes who never talked about his past, but he knew everything about weapons and security systems. He had helped them break into several Vorthak facilities without anyone getting killed. Kira had become stronger over the months. Her telepathic abilities were returning, and she could now sense other Ilani from several light years away. She had helped them rescue 12 other survivors so far. Each rescue was dangerous and difficult, but seeing her people recover from their trauma made all the risk worthwhile. The rescued Ilani were now living on a hidden colony that Jake's network had established, on an abandoned planet called Haven. It was not much to look at, just a small world with basic buildings and simple farms, but it was safe and it was free. For people who had spent years as slaves, that was everything. Kira spent her time at the colony teaching the other survivors the old ways of their people. Many of them had forgotten their own language and culture after years of slavery. Kira helped them remember the songs their grandparents had sung and the stories that had been passed down for generations. But their success had not gone unnoticed. Vorthak Commander Zeltak had put a huge bounty on Jake's head. Zeltak was one of the most dangerous Vorthak leaders, known for his cruelty and his hatred of anyone who interfered with his business. The first sign of trouble came when Ben Turner's ship was attacked by Vorthak fighters near the border of Alliance space. Ben managed to escape, but barely. His ship was badly damaged, and he had been wounded in the fight. "They're getting more aggressive," Alex said as they met in a secret location to discuss their next move. 3 of our supply runs have been attacked this month." Jake looked around the table at his allies. They were tired and worried. The constant danger was wearing on everyone. "Maybe we should slow down," Maria suggested. "Take a break and let things cool off." But Kira shook her head. "There are still others out there. I can feel them. Every day we wait, more of my people die as slaves." Jake understood her urgency, but he also knew they were walking into a trap. Zeltak was too smart to keep losing slaves without doing something about it. "We need to change our approach," Jake said. "The Vorthak expect us to keep doing small rescue missions. What if we did something they don't expect?" "Like what?" Alex asked. Jake had been thinking about this for weeks. "What if we went after their main slave processing facility, the place where they break new prisoners and decide where to sell them?" Everyone at the table went quiet. The facility Jake was talking about was on Vorthak Prime, the capital world of the Vorthak Consortium. It was the most heavily defended location in Vorthak space. "That's suicide," Ben said quietly. "They have a fleet guarding that planet." "But it's also where they're holding the most prisoners," Jake said. "Intelligence reports say there are thousands of slaves there, including at least 20 Ilani that Kira has sensed." Kira's eyes lit up with hope, but also fear. 20 of my people? Are you certain?" Jake nodded. "If we could free them all at once, we could deal a major blow to the Vorthak operation. Maybe even shut down their slave trade permanently. Or get ourselves killed trying," Lisa said. She had been against the idea from the moment Jake mentioned it. Jake looked at each of his friends around the table. He knew he was asking them to risk everything on a plan that probably would not work, but he also knew that if they succeeded, they could save thousands of innocent people. "I won't order anyone to come with me," Jake said. "This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to stay behind, I understand completely." One by one, his allies nodded their agreement. Even Lisa, despite her fears, agreed to join the mission. They spent 2 weeks planning. Maria intercepted Vorthak communications to learn about security procedures. Ben studied the facility's defenses and found weaknesses they could exploit. Alex prepared his fighter ships for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Kira worked with the other freed Ilani to prepare for what they hoped would be a massive rescue operation. If the mission succeeded, Haven Colony would suddenly have 20 more survivors who would need food, shelter, and medical care. The plan was complex but simple in its core idea. They would approach Vorthak Prime during a shift change when security was at its lowest. Alex and his fighters would create a distraction on one side of the planet while Jake's team infiltrated the processing facility. From the other side, Kira would use her telepathic abilities to locate the Ilani prisoners quickly. Ben would disable the security systems. Jake and the others would free as many prisoners as possible while Alex's fighters held off the Vorthak fleet. It was a plan with 100 ways to go wrong and only one way to go right. The night before they left for Vorthak Prime, Jake found Kira standing alone in the observation deck of their ship, looking out at the stars. Having second thoughts? He asked. No, Kira said. But I am afraid. Not for myself, but for you and the others. You are risking your lives for my people. If something happens to you because of me, nothing that happens will be because of you, Jake said firmly. We're doing this because it's the right thing to do. Because slavery is wrong no matter who the victims are. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my people have a saying. The light of one candle can drive away the darkness of a whole room. You have been that candle for us, Jake. You have brought light back to my people when we thought all light was gone forever. Jake felt emotions he could not put into words. Your people are strong, Kira. They survived because of their own strength, not because of anything I did. Strength alone is not enough, Kira said. We also needed hope. You gave us that. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the stars. Tomorrow they would either achieve their greatest victory or face their final defeat. But tonight, they were together, and they were ready to fight for what was right. In the distance, Vorthak Prime appeared as a small dot of light. Soon that dot would become the most dangerous place in the galaxy for them, but they would go anyway because some things were worth any risk. The attack on Vorthak Prime began exactly as planned. Alex Rodriguez and his fighter squadron appeared on the far side of the planet, attacking Vorthak patrol ships and drawing the main fleet away from the processing facility. Emergency alarms sounded across the planet as the defenders rushed to respond to the threat. While chaos erupted in orbit, Jake's team approached the slave facility from the opposite direction. Their ship looked like an ordinary cargo vessel, and in the confusion of the attack, no one paid attention to one more ship requesting permission to land. Ben Turner's fingers flew over his equipment as he hacked into the facility's security systems. One by one, the electronic locks and surveillance cameras shut down. Guard stations went dark. Emergency doors sealed shut, trapping most of the Vorthak guards in their barracks. We have maybe 10 minutes before they figure out what's happening, Ben said as they landed near the facility's main entrance. Jake's heart was pounding as they ran toward the building. This was the moment they had planned for, but he knew that no plan survived contact with reality. Anything could go wrong. Inside the facility, they found horrors that made Jake sick to his stomach. Hundreds of cages filled with people from dozens of different worlds. The prisoners were dirty, scared, and broken. Many were children. Kira closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, searching for her people among the masses of suffering prisoners. There, she said, pointing toward the back of the facility. My people are in the high security section, but Jake... Her voice was filled with pain. There are not 20 Ilani here. There are only 5. And they are dying. Jake's team fought their way through the facility, freeing every prisoner they could find. Lisa and Danny worked to get the freed slaves onto their ships while Dr. Wells tried to help the most badly injured. When they reached the high security section, Jake saw why Kira had been so upset. The 5 Ilani prisoners were barely alive. They had been tortured and experimented on until they were more dead than alive, but they were still Kira's people, and she would not leave them behind. As Kira knelt beside her dying people, something unexpected happened. The telepathic contact she made with them was stronger than anything she had experienced before. Instead of just sensing their thoughts, she felt their memories, their pain, and their knowledge. And through them, she sensed something that changed everything. Jake, she said, her voice filled with wonder and terror. The other Eleni. The ones I thought were scattered across the galaxy. They're not scattered. They're all here. Not in this building, but on this planet. Thousands of them, hidden in underground mines. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Thousands! Zelthak has been gathering them for years, Kira said, her mind still connected to her dying people. He's been using them for experiments, trying to steal their telepathic abilities and put them into machines. The ones who survived the experiments are kept in the deep mines, forced to use their telepathy to find precious metals. This changed everything. They could not leave with just 5 prisoners when thousands more were trapped below ground, but they also could not rescue thousands of people with their small team. That was when Kira made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. I know what to do, she said, but it will require me to sacrifice everything. Jake grabbed her arm. No. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is no. We'll find another way. But Kira shook her head. There is no other way. My people are dying. Every moment we wait, more of them die in those mines. I have to do this. Before Jake could stop her, Kira placed her hands on the dying Alani and opened her mind completely. She connected not just with the 5 prisoners in front of her, but with every Alani on the planet. Her telepathic abilities, strengthened by months of healing and hope, reached out across hundreds of miles. The effect was immediate and powerful. Every Alani in the underground mines suddenly felt Kira's presence in their minds. For the first time in years, they remembered who they were and what they had lost, but Kira did not stop there. Using a telepathic technique that her people had thought was lost forever, she connected her mind with every freed slave in the facility. Humans, aliens, creatures from worlds Jake had never heard of, all suddenly shared in the telepathic network Kira was creating. And through that network, she did something that had never been done before. She shared the memories and pain of every slave with every Vorthak on the planet. The Vorthak guards who had been chasing Jake's team suddenly stopped and fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the suffering they had caused. They experienced every moment of pain, every loss, every broken dream of the people they had enslaved. Commander Zeltek in his command center screamed as the telepathic wave hit him. For the first time in his life, he felt what his victims felt. The weight of thousands of destroyed lives crashed into his mind all at once. Across the planet, the same thing happened to every Vorthak. They could not hurt their prisoners anymore because they now experienced their prisoners' pain as their own. The telepathic connection showed them exactly what they had done and how it felt to be on the receiving end of their cruelty. But the effort was killing Kira. Jake could see her body growing weaker as she maintained the massive telepathic network. "Kira, stop!" he shouted. "You're going to die." "Worth it," she whispered. "My people free. Finally free." Jake did something desperate. He grabbed Kira's hand and opened his own mind to her telepathic connection. He could not share her telepathic abilities, but he could share her burden. His human determination and refusal to give up flowed into the network, giving Kira the strength to maintain the connection without dying. The telepathic wave spread beyond Vorthak Prime. It reached other Vorthak worlds, other slave facilities, other places where suffering had been ignored for too long. Everywhere the wave touched, slavers found themselves unable to continue their cruelty. Slave uprisings began across Vorthak space. Guards who had spent years being cruel to their prisoners suddenly could not bring themselves to raise a weapon. Slaves who had been broken and hopeless suddenly remembered their strength and their worth. The Vorthak consortium collapsed within hours. Zelthak, driven mad by the sudden understanding of what he had done, surrendered to Jake's forces. Other Vorthak leaders fled or begged for mercy. In the underground mines of Vorthak Prime, thousands of Ilani prisoners walked free for the first time in decades. They emerged into sunlight they had thought they would never see again. Jake held Kira as the telepathic network finally faded. She was weak but alive, and her eyes were bright with joy and exhaustion. "It's over," she said. "The network is broken. My people are free." Jake looked around at the chaos surrounding them. Freed slaves were helping each other, former guards, were asking for forgiveness, and in the distance, ships were arriving to help with the massive rescue operation. "No," Jake said, squeezing Kira's hand. "It's not over. It's just beginning." 5 years later, Jake stood on the rebuilt world of New Elan, watching Kira teach a group of young Alani children the ancient songs of their people. But these were not just traditional songs. They included new verses about courage, about friendship across different species, and about the human captain who had refused to walk away when he could have saved himself. The Alani had become the galaxy's greatest peacekeepers, using their telepathic abilities to prevent conflicts and heal old wounds between different species. They had not forgotten their suffering, but they had chosen to use their pain to help others avoid the same fate. Jake was now an ambassador for the Coalition of Free Worlds, but his proudest achievement was watching Kira lead her people into a new golden age. The Alani population had grown from a handful of broken survivors to thousands of healthy, happy people. "You know," Kira said as she joined Jake on the observation platform, "my people have written new songs about you." "I hope they're not too embarrassing," Jake said with a smile. "They call you the handholder," Kira said, "the human who held our hands when we could not hold our own." Jake looked out over the thriving Alani city, with its beautiful buildings that grew like living trees and its parks filled with children's laughter. "I just did what anyone should do," he said. "No," Kira said, taking his hand just like she had that first night when her mind had touched his. "You did what only you would do. You saw suffering and chose to care. You saw injustice and chose to act. You saw broken people and chose to help them heal." In the distance, ships from dozens of different worlds were landing at the spaceport. Representatives from the Coalition, traders bringing goods and gifts, families of other freed slaves coming to thank the Alani for their help in healing from their own trauma. The galaxy was not perfect. There was still suffering and injustice in many places. But it was better than it had been, and it would continue to get better as long as there were people willing to take someone's hand and refuse to let go. Jake squeezed Kira's hand and smiled. They had work to do,